Welcome to Under the Microscope. I am your host, Jenny Germano. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Today's topic, scaling cannabis operations through building better employee workplaces. And before I dive in, I just want to share a little bit about my background. I got my start working in the cannabis industry in 2009 in Denver, Colorado, running and operating a vertically integrated cannabis operations. And in 2015, I founded my company, ICS Consulting, where I help cannabis operators navigate the regulatory landscape across the United States. Everyone give a warm welcome to my next guest, Scott Newman. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Jenny. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Scott is a business consultant for Adaptive HR and OneDigital. We really appreciate you being here. Why don't you go ahead and let our audience know about your background and when you decided to come on over to the cannabis industry?
Yeah. First of all, thanks very much for having known you for a number of years. So getting to be part of the guest is great. So thank you. I've been working in the cannabis industry since 2019. I've been in sales and business development for my whole career, 30 plus years. Started ADP fresh out of college. I worked in the technology space when kind of .com went up and down. Medical sales, did that for almost 10 years, but really always just liked working with entrepreneurs and small and mid-sized growing companies. So I was working with paychecks, doing HR sales to companies in the Boston area. In Massachusetts, recreational cannabis was really starting to just get launched and take off. So I'm using CBD. And so there was a trade show in Boston. A lot of the listeners probably know with NECANN. And I went on a Saturday, quite frankly, not really knowing anything what to expect or what the show would entail. And when I saw what was there, it just really blew me away. Just literally thousands of people attending, all walks of life. People, whether it's attorneys or business owners or people from varying backgrounds. Probably the thing I saw the most is just unbelievable passion about the industry and wanting to build it. And so I was like, hey, if there's a way that I could somehow connect into this industry and use my background, I think would be really intriguing. And so at the show, I met the founders of a new startup company, Adaptive HR, who had built a payroll HR and benefits company called the PEO, because the ADPs and the paychecks, many of the biggest companies out there, weren't servicing the new licensees. And so they decided to launch their own company to help operators in Massachusetts. Met through the show, and I was intrigued by what they were doing. They liked my background. And so technically, Jenny, I became a full-time employee number one.
I didn't realize you were number one.
Options or Lamborghinis, but I got a couple logo shirts along the way, but that was about the extent of it. But
you were number one employee.
Absolutely, full-time employee one. But that's how I got into the space. And then it turned out that a few months later, our company got acquired by a national PEO out of Dallas called Rescheduling Edge that service operators all over the country. And they were getting into the CBD space, liked what we were doing. And then that allowed us to scale nationally. And then 4 years later, OneDigital acquired us. And so now we're the cannabis-facing PEO of $1 billion plus company. So it's been an exciting journey.
Wow, that's really wild. Yeah, it's funny is I can't remember where we met, probably at a trade show.
It was right around the pandemic, yeah,
2019. I was probably doing, 15 trade shows a year. It was, trade shows were bumping.
You were one of the first consultants I met in the space.
Oh, really? Seems so long ago. The landscape has changed so much, but at the end of the day, people still need help with compliance. People are still opening. People still need to get their insurance figured out. They need HR. They need to take care of their employees and have systems in place. And that's never going to change, no matter how much the market matures or what happens to the market or the direction that it goes into. We still have a workforce. We still have compliance and regulations, and all those things are going to still need help. We might all have to adapt, or things might change, but I think that piece is always going to stay the same.
No doubt. I think that can only go so far, right? Businesses are all about people, that building the right infrastructure and the right people. And again, we'll probably come back to this around infrastructure throughout the course of our chat. But regardless of how much technology is there, there's other things that are critical to having it when a company starts their business and scales their business.
No, really good stuff. I'm going to go ahead and dive in. I'm going to start what operators should think about early And this is really important because I work with a lot of people who are just starting off, or they work on their license and get the application through, and they open and they get so busy that there's a lot of stuff they forget or they don't do right out of the gate. So that was important to address this area first. What should every cannabis company have in place, like from the beginning?
I think there's a few different things that stick out to me. Is one is just, first of all, just having a clear onboarding process to bring those new employees on. Because the thing is that how many people, not just in cannabis, but any job, if their onboarding isn't effective that first day, what's that first day experience? What's that first week experience? What's that first month experience, right? Are their expectations clear, right? So even just having clear job descriptions from the get-go, I think that is something that's critical that so many businesses forget about, or yeah, we'll get to it. But then all of a sudden the we'll get to it never gets there. I give the example, it's just if a coach tells a track athlete to say, run, how far, how fast, what time do I need to do? Or is it much easier to say, hey, you know what? I need you to run 800 meters. We're going to do 10 hurdles, and I'm looking for a time of less than a minute and 30 seconds. Anyway, you get the drift. But having clear job descriptions is critical. Onboarding process that's clear. It's not just shuffling paperwork. So you want to have that professionalized from the get-go. And again, some of these things don't take thousands of dollars. It's just having some core basics in place. A compliant payroll system. How are you going to effectively pay these employees and make sure the payroll taxes are compliant from the local government, state government, as well as the IRS, right? And then the other thing I think that is very important is having an employee handbook.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Again, being able to have the rules of the road. Sometimes people say, oh, it's just a bunch of HR. Yes, it is part of that, but it's also, it does a number of things that it communicates, hey, we're a real company, right? This is how we do things. This is what to expect. And then it also protects the business. So I think the things to me, I would recommend that every business owner who's coming on to make sure that they work with someone or experts to get those things in place.
Yeah, I think you gave a really important list. I think it's true that people forget about those things, especially the part about the description of the job roles. I find that they'll put them in the application if it's required, but they're canned, right? They're just for the application. They don't really know yet because they haven't opened. And just like the SOPs or application SOPs, the job descriptions for the application. And I think the biggest complaint that I hear from employees, they don't really understand their job roles. They don't actually get trained on the job descriptions, or the job descriptions are generic and really don't cover. They'll realize, I didn't even realize I had to do that. I didn't even know that was in my job description.
What you just said is probably one of the biggest things that complaints that we hear from owners and their teams is an employee coming to them and say, I didn't know I had a list. This was part of my role. I didn't know this was something that I had to do. Or they're saying, hey, you know what? I'm being judged on something that nobody told me about. So the thing, the job description is not upfront and clear. And then you have a manager oftentimes who has an expectation for something that doesn't match that. Now you have a disconnect. And that's what the manager level could be frustrated that the employee doesn't understand. And the employee is frustrated because they weren't given the right direction. So those are all things early on that I would say are important things, not just, hey, I'm just checking a box to make sure that I'm meeting some criteria of the local cannabis agency.
I can't remember how many episodes ago, but I talked about why cannabis businesses fail, or what leads to cannabis businesses failing is the compiling of the lack of communication in the business for years and years. And obviously multiple things leads to a business failing, but when that lack of communication, that can really damage your business in the long term, because it just builds and builds, and then there's no culture around communication and how things are done and who's responsible for what. And then nobody can take accountability, and there's nowhere to take accountability. And in that scenario that you described about the manager employee and employee manager is exactly what happens in the cannabis industry every single day.
Totally. You said it. And also too, is that you talk about communications. It's the heart, of course, of any business, but especially with cannabis, because so many people come in, they're like, oh, I'm going to get my license. I'm a cultivator. I know every strain that there is in the book. It's great that you have all those things in place. but how are you going to communicate to those people on your team, to your leadership level, to the employee level, what their roles and responsibilities are? And then oftentimes what we also see, Jenny, is that sometimes people are, for instance, in a retail, right? You don't just necessarily have one manager. There's multiple, because obviously they're working 7 days, long shifts. There's multiple managers. So are your managers trained the same way? Because oftentimes we see different styles, and that infrastructure and those things aren't laid down at the beginning. You could have employees confused because one person has one particular style and one set of expectations. And then the next time that they're scheduled, you have a different style, a different set of expectations. And that could lead to frustration, burnout, and employees leave. We hear about
so true.
Turnover is really, unfortunately, it's a huge part of the cannabis industry, as obviously most folks on this call, but the listeners know about.
Or they might not know yet if they're brand new and they're trying to figure out like all the things they need to do to get their business going before they apply for a license, or they're thinking about getting into the industry too. Sure. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing operators make when they're trying to handle HR internally, where they're actually not getting the support? I see a lot of people winging it out there.
I would probably say the biggest mistake that people guess, you want to guess what it is? It's 2 letters. AI.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
Right. And not to say that AI can't have some type of guidance, right? It certainly can. We all use AI in some shape or form. But if you're a business owner and you're the one who's on the name of your business and you have an employee relations scenario, do you really want to be going to Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT to have that be the ultimate source of truth? That's a huge problem.
Give me some examples. This is new for me because when I was an employee in the cannabis industry, we didn't have AI. So I don't really understand the different scenarios. I haven't had any clients having this issue yet.
It could be just as simple as, okay, you need to terminate somebody on Friday. What should I do?
That's what they're asking AI?
People ask everything.
Oh, they're asking AI that.
And think about any certain circumstances that could be there. People are asking. Now, I'm not saying that AI can't provide a good answer. It can. But ultimately, when you're in a situation where you have to make a business decision, and then there's things that have real impact to your business, to the employee that you're letting go, to your own business, exposure. What happens if you get sued because you didn't terminate? Are you doing the right documentation? Are you providing COVID notice? All these types of things. Is that particular question, when you asked AI, was it state specific? Maybe you didn't ask that question. So now there's a question that comes up and says that maybe you asked it generically, but if I'm an employer in New York versus an employer in California or employer in Missouri, those could be 3 different scenarios on how to do specific things. And so there's, again, is ultimately whether you work with a company like ourselves who provides HR services, you work with an HR consultant, you work with an attorney who has expertise, make sure that you have expertise that it's worth the investment at some point. Again, obviously, not every business owner who's getting started is going to bring on someone full-time to have these things, but have more than just AI to be able to understand how to handle certain areas of your business, both from a leadership as well as your day-to-day.
I didn't even realize that was going on. And maybe because I'm such a policy-driven person that when I work with operators and help them, we make sure that all those policies are in place. They have a termination policy and how they're supposed to handle it. And boom, here's the checklist. Here's our new hire checklist.
When they hire you.
Here's our termination checklist. Here are all the things that we have to do.
You're making the point exactly, is people know, ideally, when they bring you on as a consultant with your expertise and your knowledge, that you're going to be able to give them the playbook to say, whether you work with me or not, here's what working with an expert brings.
It's true.
Most operators, and so many that we see, Jenny, I'm sure you see them too, in the cannabis space, are first-time operators. Many times they're first-time business owners, and they're first-time cannabis business owners in a highly regulated environment. And you're dealing with a fast-moving industry. Changes are happening unbelievably quickly, from rules and regs, from a payroll, from wages are changing with different pay rates. There's pay transparency laws. There's things that you can and can't ask in job interviews. There's a lot of different things that there's a huge amount of it. I'm sure just like in your world, so many people just don't know what they don't know. And it's not because necessarily they're trying to avoid it. They're just, I think what we generally hear are people just overwhelmed. There's so much that they have to address and they only have so much bandwidth. So the easy fallback is, oh, I didn't know. The challenge is that, you know what, unfortunately, when it relates around employees, the government and penalties and those things, they don't care.
It's so funny because I think about over 11 years ago when I was an employee and all the different places I worked over the 6 years of running operations is I would think of all the places I worked, one place in particular had incredible HR system set up. And that's where I really learned about HR. But all the previous operations, it was like, throw it in the wind and see what happens. It was really crazy. The reason why I'm really good at drafting policy and handbooks and SOPs is because when I would go start a new job, nobody had that in place. Nobody had any systems in place. And so at every new company, I would have to come in and build their systems for them. But I'm not mad about it because it gave me the skill set to do everything I can do today. I would say that one job that taught me about HR, that's where I learned about having the termination checklist and the new hire checklist. I was a manager. I wasn't the HR person, but they trained me on all these things to make sure I was doing things appropriately with hiring and firing with the staff.
You got good insight because of, again, it comes down to what was there to educate you to be in their business.
They did. They had a person work with me one-on-one and just really, even though I had been a manager in dispensaries for a while, and then my hospitality background and being a manager and working in commercial kitchens and catering, but still they helped me with manager training in the cannabis industry, which really helped me incredibly in my career. And I do understand for the people who say, I didn't know any better. I know where they're at because I've worked for companies like that. But I think we're mature now in the cannabis industry. I feel like there's no more excuses. Even if you're a new state coming online, I feel like at this point, there's no more excuses anymore because the cannabis industry is how old now? I think we're going on
California.
Colorado, the first regulated industry launched, I think it was 2014 in Colorado and Washington State. So that's how long, at least regulated cannabis, adult use cannabis has been going.
10 plus years. What we keep hearing too, I'm sure you hear it too, is that even though it's 10 plus year industry, it's still immature in some of the things around the people side of the business. There's a lot of people who are just jumping into it and still don't have the level of infrastructure, benefits, the way that they're managing employees is still, even though it's a 10 plus year industry, there's a lot of what's called room to grow, I think.
Look, I feel like in America today, I can go open a small business, a restaurant or a cafe or a coffee shop, and I can be a crappy owner. I can be a crappy owner. I cannot have a handbook. Maybe I don't train my employees the right way, and I don't understand labor laws, and people quit, and I have unemployment claims. I feel like it can happen in any industry, and I think in any industry, you can be not prepared.
Right. Well, the one thing, if anybody takes anything from this show, is the old Army phrase: you got to be prepared as best as possible.
Yes.
And I guess the thing is, not knowing is okay. So many businesses go into business not knowing all, and who knows all the things. You don't. You have one area of expertise that people go in because, hey, they have unbelievable skill set in being cultivation, right? Or they really want to grow and build their business in retail. Or, hey, you know what? They're an expert in extraction, or with their science background, they're opening up a lab. And those are all levels of expertise that no one could ever take away from them. But what we're also hearing is that there's a big part of the rest of the business that if you don't know it, that's okay, but find some resources who can help you along the way. Because the bottom line, this is such a challenging industry for their financials now, between obviously other things that are out there, that the not knowing piece, you don't want that to come back and bite you in the eye.
Yeah, that's so true. My other question is, when should operators start thinking about OSHA and workers' compensation? I feel like a lot of times they try to avoid the workers' comp, and then OSHA, they really just come into the manufacturing and cultivation facilities.
Sure. I would say this is as a probably way I'm not an OSHA expert, nor do I ever claim.
You're not?
not. But what I will say is from workers' compensation, that's requirement day one, right? That's something that's going to be required of businesses to have. And essentially the insurance is, hey, if an employee hurts themselves on the roll, that there's a level of insurance behind there if someone has some type of injury. So again, it's critical that business owners talk to an expert in business insurance to be able to have that from day one. That's not like it's a nice piece of swag to have in marketing logos. Again, nothing gets marketing, but workers' compensation to make sure you're protecting your employees and that you are covered as a business. That's critical from day one.
Do you have to have it? Is required by the federal government, or is that a state law?
Yeah, and again, I can go back to it, or we can take a look at it. But primarily, it is required in states. There may be a state or two, I think, that may not require workers' compensation, but bulk of the states in the emerging markets that we tend to work in and see all require workers' comp policies to be in place for the businesses. The other areas around OSHA that you talk to, obviously, that's not really around as much the areas that I tend to focus on, having conversations with business owners. I always say, just like in any part of business, speak to a professional around safety. But what I will say is that there are states, for instance, like I know in Massachusetts, that provide grants for safety training. So what I would say is, again, talk to other operators in your state and say, hey, are there any types of grants that you've used from an OSHA and a safety perspective that we can take advantage? And sometimes they can pay up to 100% of them. So now a resource that you could use. Again, I don't know how it is in every state, but I know in Massachusetts, they have that from a grant. So I would highly recommend that operators, if they are getting their license, find out what's available to them so they can have expertise and ideally even have it for either no money or reduced costs.
That's awesome that they do that grant in Massachusetts. They do not do that in Colorado. I do work on the OSHA side of things, and I would say, obviously, people should think about OSHA right out of the gate. OSHA is heavily involved in the cannabis industry now. It's no secret. I'm a big myth buster with that. Everyone acts like OSHA doesn't exist.
Asking the question yourself.
I just side throw in there in case you wanted to talk about it, but I don't mind tag teaming and helping.
No, all good. The one thing that we'll probably both agree on is all of these things, as much as you can lay down, it sounds silly, but it's literally brick by brick, right? You're building the foundation.
Yeah.
Foundation of any successful business, especially cannabis business, is having the right infrastructure in place from a safety perspective, from a people perspective, from a compliance perspective. So all those things that you can, sometimes people might balk a little bit more about what it's going to cost from it. I'm sure you hear this a lot, but
yeah,
a lot of it's you either pay for it now or you pay for it more later. And so,
if
you don't invest in those things around safety early on, obviously the thing that nobody wants is for an injury in the role.
If you're listening, I would definitely do the research, find out if your state offers the grant. Also, a lot of times, every state's different when it comes to OSHA. And a lot of states like Michigan and California, and I'm trying to think of another one, Oregon, they have really good OSHA programs for cannabis. They have cannabis-specific resources that you can get directly from them. They'll work with you. In Colorado, they pretty much come in and inspect you and you're going to get a violation. So it really depends on the state, and you'll have to see what the resources are available for that.
That's why you got to work your magic in Colorado.
Yeah, definitely.
Make it happen. The operators.
When companies begin to grow and expand, which happens, right? I could be a one-store operator and start off really small. Maybe it's like the 2 owners and maybe 1 to 2 employees, and they're trying that for 6 months. I've seen it where all of a sudden, a year later, now they're at 9 employees or 10 employees, and then year 2, now we're at 20 employees. Totally. And I feel like that's a natural progression.
That's a very common path.
Then they're thinking about, let's be vertically integrated. Now we want to get a grow. Now we want to buy a manufacturing facility, or maybe we want to get a second dispensary, and that's going to take another 10 employees. So what starts breaking internally as the teams get larger for these operators that start expanding? Because I feel like their systems are going to get put to the test.
Absolutely. I think there's no one exact answer. It's going to depend on every business and every person's situation. I think communication and consistency or inconsistency, kind of go back what we were saying before. Okay, now you have 1 retail, now you want to go to 2, and now you're going to hire a new retail manager. Is that person's style and their expertise going to be able to be the same as the retail manager in store one, right? You're going to be able to retain and attract the same employees in the second store as you can in the first store, right? And then also just around policies, right? Okay, so when you just had one store, everybody was there. And a lot of times maybe the owner has so many things in their head that they know, but now they got to go to store 2 and 3. Are those documented exactly what store 2 and 3 should be done? Or is that put down in writing and explained in the second layers of leadership know how to execute those in those other stores? So I think, again, having clear communication, and sometimes we're working formally at 10 people is not going to work at 20 or 30. Right?
So true.
Also, again, like we talked about more locations. Sometimes the information doesn't flow as easily. Obviously, when everybody's in one store, now you're going to have multi-locations. Now, obviously, multi-location could be multiple retail, multiple doors, right? But to your point earlier, multi-location could be you have a retail, now the grow is going to be somewhere different. So how are employees all getting on the same, do you have some type of a channel? Do you have a Slack channel set up so all the employees are information consistently communicated across whether you have just retail or it's become vertically integrated? So that's something that we hear. And then probably one of the biggest challenges that we see is not just expansion of size, but it's expansion of going out of that market.
MSO, I was just thinking that. I wrote that down to ask you.
An SSO, a single state operator, to an MSO. Now, people sometimes believe MSOs, hey, it's Curaleaf, it's Verano, it's GTI. Guess what? If you work in Massachusetts and then you hire and you open up a second location in New Jersey, guess what? You're an MSO.
True.
Right? So now what we see, and this happens all the time, Jenny, with operators that we hear, hey, I got a store and we just got our license in New York or New Jersey, for example. Awesome. Congratulations. Do you have any sense on what the new rules and regs are in those 2 states? Does your brother-in-law, who's the VP of HR, really understand what now when you want to move, you're going to be managing employees across 3 different states? Do you understand labor peace agreement situation in place? Do you understand what rules on how you've hit different size thresholds?
Yeah.
Right? So there's that. And then now managing the payroll complexities across multiple states. And now obviously potentially having to handle benefits across multiple states. So those are a lot of things that are challenging while trying to keep up with that same small culture that you created as a single location operator. Are you going to have that across now the new locations? Again, there's a number of things that we mentioned there, but it obviously, like any growth, becomes harder to manage for a lot of the operators that we talk to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the single state operator who maybe has 5 stores in one state, they spend all that maybe a couple years growing into those 5 stores and they get it nailed down. I feel like going out of state is the ultimate stress test on a business because you have the whole new set of regulations and you're trying to take all your model that works in one state, and now it's going to get put into another state and you're going to have to adapt and change that model a little bit and change some of your processes. You still need to streamline and things need to be consistent because now you've got 2 different states of employees and staff and management and executives that have to communicate with each other to make sure that everything's going accordingly to plan. And I think you gave some really good points. And I'm sure on the East Coast, because it's so compact, in Rhode Island, I'm sure it's going to be a bunch of people in Massachusetts that are trying to get open and launch for the adult use market. And like you said, New York or New Jersey.
Or looking at those markets, or sometimes we see people who have been from mature markets out your way, right? In Colorado, very mature market, who are now like, hey, you know what? The cost compressions just the margins keep coming down and down, right? What you got in years ago is nowhere near where they are today.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when they look at the East Coast or say, like, hey, Minnesota's an emerging market, right? So
yeah.
We start seeing people who are moving into the Minnesota market.
Well, that's so true.
They're trying to go where we have a number of people that we see who are going after those emerging markets and trying to realize that there's going to be a limited time before those markets compress as well. So it's just really being able to try to get your arms around as ownership and leadership how you want to scale
Yeah.
and plan for it accordingly.
Yeah, and I just had a New Jersey operator on my podcast last week, and they were telling me they're already getting hit by price compression, and they're about to hit 2 years in operations. It's interesting.
Crazy.
It's happening quicker. It's taking people 2 to 3 years to get open, and they're getting hit with price compression within the first 2 years of operating. So essentially, it's 4 to 5 years.
Yes.
That includes all the time that you're taking to do your application, your build out, all the delays that you're going to face, launching, and then when you get open.
And like to your point is you're not opening a pizza store, right?
Yeah.
You're spending a ton of money to get through it. So that's why when we're having conversations with business owners and talking about these types of things, we're saying, sure, what your long-term strategy is, but if you're going to make hay while the sun shines, so to speak, is what do you want to have from the get-go as tight processes in place to run your business? Because the thing is, what you don't want to be doing is people have a hole in the back of their boat. They don't realize it, and they're taking water on, right? And that these things happen when people don't plan for, obviously, the things that you talk about from a compliance side or us from the people side of the business, trying to be as proactive as possible. Because if you only have limited time or a window, a lot of people are thinking about a big part of these things is M&A, right? It's a huge, it's a huge thing. Fortunately, some businesses are not doing well and there's going to be a big shakeout. It's the companies who have the right foundations and the right infrastructure who are going to be the ones who will be the acquirers. And obviously the ones who don't, they're going to be on the other side.
Yeah, especially with medical now and the DEA registration and the rescheduling, at least for the medical cannabis piece. Will be interesting to see how many mergers and acquisitions we have in the next 2 years. I'm excited because we're getting to the employee benefits section, which is really important to me, and workplace culture. That's always been something that's really important in helping employees and owners have that good culture. So what are employees looking for from employers today besides pay? And then my other question is, we have multiple generations in the cannabis industry, and is all the different generations factoring into it? Because I feel like Generation X might want something different. Boomers might want something different versus Generation Z. Are you seeing that play into things as well?
Yeah, you have a few different questions there. So I love the passion about, frankly, talking about taking care of employees around benefits is sometimes more fun than just talking about payroll and labor law compliance, even though that's part of what we do for business, because obviously people are the most important asset of any business, right? They're literally the lifeblood of any business, especially in the cannabis business. And what business doesn't want to take care of their staff, doesn't want to do right by them? But many times we see businesses who don't feel that they can afford some of the certain things that are out there. So it's a balancing act, trying to see what can we afford versus what can we actually do and what do we want to do. So a couple things I think you were saying is, one is what types of benefits are out there that are resonating with employees. And also, I think the second part question was, are there things that are maybe generationally different? Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
I guess the first thing is just right away, the easy answers could be obviously like healthcare. That's one that we would encourage business owners to think about. Now, we understand that sometimes new businesses aren't there yet from day one, but I think most business owners want to have a path towards that quicker rather than later, because especially think about on a retail level, Jenny, right? I think a lot of times business owners sometimes don't realize is they're not only competing for the same talent with other cannabis retailers. If they're paying that, let's call it $18 to $20 per hour.
Yeah.
Guess who else they're competing with? Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, every single other retail that's paying that same amount in their 5, 10, 15 mile geography, but they're providing a whole slew of other benefits, a richer package. And that person might be looking at it and be like, hey, if I'm going to pay the same amount, yeah, it's a weed shop, but they're offering a lot more things than the cannabis company who I just saw Indeed. So that's one thing. So I would encourage business owners to look at healthcare. But even if you're not there right away, I would say, can you even afford to do some type of, say, a virtual telemedicine, right? You have to be full-blown healthcare. You can meet halfway. Hey, maybe we can't afford that, and we understand, but can you do some type of a 24/7 telemedicine, perhaps, that businesses can offer to their employees? Obviously, you get hit by a car, you're not going to use telemedicine. But if there's something that just needs some basics that these doctors can get a prescription. That is a recommendation that we suggest to take a peek at. So obviously the big ones around medical, dental, and vision. Those are probably the big three. And the thing is, more and more, just like any other regular job, 401k, retirement. I mean, everybody wants to be able to not have to be able to make a choice when they get to a certain age, whether I want to retire. Now, obviously, you mentioned multi-generations, right? You have people in the workforce between their 20s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to have a retirement plan that meets all those generations. And the other thing, what people forget about sometimes is business owners or first-time cannabis owners, they don't necessarily have to contribute. So it doesn't have to come out of pocket, that they can just work with a partner who works with 401k in the cannabis industry and just allow the employee to make a contribution.
Agree.
Like, oh, I can't afford that. Would you really look
Yeah.
into that? And when we have the conversation, oh, you know what? I never realized that. And now, especially if they're trying to attract and retain the best people are used to getting a 401k. So that is a big one. I would say a couple other things that we're starting to see more of people look for is around mental health. May is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm not sure if you're aware. Obviously, cannabis's jobs are stressful jobs. So looking at what types of mental health support that a business owner sometimes doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Sometimes it's some programs that comes as part of the package. EAPs, employee assistance program that 24/7 can confidential provide some resources to an employee. I'll give you an example of why would someone do that and how would it be used, right? And what an EAP is, it's 24/7. It allows the employee to not have to go to the business owner to let them know they're having a challenge. It's like there's a buffer. Some people just hate. Who wants to be able to go to their boss and be like, I'm having a problem, I'm having a tough time.
It's uncomfortable,
It's
to be
really
honest.
uncomfortable. So what an EAP is, it allows that employee to have the safety and the comfort to be able to go to a third party and be able to find someone who can be a person who could maybe help support them in some way. For example, one of my colleagues years ago who used an EAP when I was with Paychecks, he had his mom pass and was going through a tough time. And he used an EAP through the company to find a bereavement counselor. And that was very valuable and got him through a tough time. So those are all things help. We all have something that we're dealing with. And so if you can provide some resources to your employees, that could be huge to them. So I'd say those are some things that people don't always think about. You mentioned multi-generations. One of the hot things with benefits is pet benefits, right?
Oh, I have that written down, the pet insurance. That's not crazy?
Yeah. Now, what ends up happening, especially a lot of young people in cannabis, maybe they don't have a spouse, they don't have kids, but man, their pet, their dog is their best friend. So especially with the pandemic years ago, so many people got pets. That is now a hot thing. And the last one I would say is around financial assistance. Being able to have some type of a resource, you can help your employees be able to manage their money a little bit better. Whether it's webinars, that could be something. Are you familiar with early wage access, Jenny?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty popular now. Some of the cannabis payroll and HR companies are providing that as a way that, hey, you know what? Just say company's paying every 2 weeks, but if I'm not getting paid till next Friday, instead of having to go for a payday loan or ask your boss for money, you can now get an advance on money you've already made.
Gosh, especially the companies that only pay you once a month.
Yeah,
that's always challenging.
Yeah, if you are at least bi-weekly, but there's so many people in cannabis who are paycheck to paycheck. So being able to provide just something as simple as getting through the bi-weekly cycle without being totally stressed about money can be impactful to some financial resources and coaching. So those are some things that we're starting to really hear can be way to be impactful to businesses, and also without having to be just, hey, it's all about the cost of healthcare.
Oh, what about loans? Is there something out there to help? Are there programs out there as part of benefits to getting them access if they want to, let's say, put a down payment on a house?
Yeah. If a down payment, that's a big loan.
Yeah.
I haven't seen as many for down payment. Sometimes some companies might have local, depending on the company and who the institution, the payroll HR business that the company has engaged with. They may have loan programs that are there. We don't see as much as for down payment on homes as
Okay.
more as there's programs like, for instance, like maybe somebody wants to buy a new laptop. And they're like, man, it's going to cost me $1,500. Guess what? I don't have $1,500 to pay for a new laptop because my kid's got to go to college in the fall. So what they can do is they can make that a payroll deduction that will now come out. It will be like an interest free. The cost may be a little bit higher, but now that they can get it taken out of their paycheck as a deduction over the course of, let's call it 18 or 24 months.
Probably cheaper than a credit card, to be honest.
That's right. So the cost is going to be a little bit higher, but it's going to allow that employee to take care of them and their family for a specific need, and then allow them to budget out that way.
Interesting.
So that's a program that we've seen. And the same thing also for short-term loans. One of the companies that we partnered with is called FinFit.
Mm-hmm.
It's dependent by state. Which is a service that we as well as I'm sure some other companies provide under their HR umbrella, but allow the employee to get a short-term loan. So yes,
Interesting.
it would be short-term, small loan, not, hey, I'm going to be buying a $600,000 house.
Got you. No, that's interesting. I think it's a great idea. I just know in all the jobs that I ever had for the last 20, 30 years, we never had mental health anything, never had pet insurance. Mental health for us in the 90s, it was pretty much smoking weed and going out in nature. And I think with pets, a lot of people are opting out of children and they're opting in on pet children. And so I think having pet insurance.
Pet insurance has been big, for multiple reasons that you mentioned. I think, again, does a business owner have to provide all of these things? It's up to them and it's up to each businesses and their budgets. But I think it's important for business owners to stay competitive now. Again, the whole big things are attracting and retaining, right? So if you do want to do those things, think about where you are in your journey as a business owner. But just try to find out from multiple folks. Don't just talk to one broker. Don't just talk to one person.
I agree, yeah.
I think one other thing that I would suggest, if you want to know where you are as a business owner, how you shape up compared to your competition, it's a simple thing. Go to Indeed, right? You're a dispensary owner in Denver, right? And you want to kind of see how you're doing compared to your colleagues in the space. Go to Indeed and just type in cannabis, Denver, 15 miles. Now you're going to see exactly who's hiring, what they're paying, what their benefits are, and when do they make the post. That's quick intel.
It really is in job boards. And I always tell dispensaries when they're launching retail, if you want to see how the customers are and how demanding or what they expect, go read a bunch of Yelp reviews. Like the market research is out there. Just go online and read. We talked about budget. And you also mentioned the 401k. And it's a little known secret that people don't even realize this is every time you say 401k, everyone thinks they have to pay into it. I'm always pushing, are you going to have employee benefits? Can you at least do PTO? And what about 401k? And they're like, well, I can't do any of that.
I can't afford it. Way too much money.
And so for the startups out there that they're thinking, I probably won't be able to offer health insurance or any of these things for a year. Can they do in that first year of being a startup if capital is tight? First of all, I don't know why people are not raising capital to cover this right out of the gate, but sometimes they're not, and maybe they're strapped. I do. Let's partner. Honestly.
Make that part of the fund. Hey, we're going to open up a $4 million facility and we need $500,000 for benefits to take care of the best employees for my cultivation. Yeah, would love to see it. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think your question is around just in general, as a newer business, as a startup business, what can business owners do to think about these things? I guess the first thing is just kind of look at, are there things like you mentioned, like paid time off, right? What are you doing there, right? First of all, are you putting in any type of recognition programs? Like even just at the get-go, who doesn't want to be seen and recognized for what they're doing well at their job? And many operators that we talk to haven't done that.
Yeah.
Are you doing employee appreciation things? And again, these things sound small, but if you're trying to differentiate yourself and your budget is lean, I would try to say is look at every avenue that you can to be able to show the employees that you care about them. Because I want to work for an employer that they're like, do they really care about me?
It's so true.
And it's not just what that dollar is. People have worked for businesses that, regardless of what that hour, that salary is, they don't like the people that they're working with. they're not getting recognized. They're not getting the things. So if they're going to have to work 10, 12, whatever the amount of days, can you show recognition? Can you show that you care? Can you show those things in there? Because when things get hard and the startup business doesn't have more money to add, if you're not doing those things, that employee's going to walk away to get that same dollar per hour right down the street or at any other business that has better benefits than you. So I'd say that would be one thing to put in place. Second thing is, are there things like there's some vendors out there that can do voluntary benefits? Just to start, hey, business owner doesn't have to pay for these things. Like the AFLAC type of programs in the world.
Oh, got it.
That businesses are saying, hey, we can come to you. You can make these voluntary to your employees, and then they can pick and choose if they want to move forward with these programs.
Like pet insurance.
Yeah, like pet insurance, for example. The business owner.
That's a good example of one where the employer might not pay towards.
So is pet insurance going to be the end all be all? No, not at all. But those would be some ideas. The other option would be obviously letting people know I work for this type of organization. It's a business model of PEO. Obviously, you're familiar with it. We've talked about this over the years. And for folks listening, a PEO is a professional employer organization that combines services of HR, payroll, benefits, and risk management like workers' comp. But the strength in it from a benefits perspective, Jenny, is that because there's thousands of employees, now the business, through what's called co-employment, a shared structure, where they're actually sharing the employee with the PEO organization, can now really leverage the group size and now get access to benefits and resources that they would never be able to get access to on their own in a cost-effective manner. So that's been something where they're able to get things like dental and vision. They're able to get a retirement plan at a very cost-effective price, and they don't have to do a match. So what maybe a business owner might have thought, man, it's going to cost me $8,000 a year. I can't afford that. Maybe can you do it for less than $1,000 and you don't have to match? Now you're getting into something, hey, if we're able to retain those key employees, now that's a big difference. Now the cost of investing in those benefits pays for and more losing 3-4 employees a month because you don't have anything. So that's where that return, and that's where speaking with a professional, where you really want to look at what the investment would be versus what the return would be.
Yeah.
So getting access, because the whole thing is all these companies like social equity, startups, what we try to tell people is like, how do you want to try to level the playing field to make your business the kick-ass place to work that has a great program, that has a great culture, that has all these things? There's different strategies to do it. This is one methodology.
Yeah, I had an operator on a couple episodes ago, and they are an employee-first business model. And they have done an excellent job, and they don't have a large turnover with employees. They actually retain their employees, and they have 5 stores. They're in the state of Missouri, and they've just done a great job with their dispensary model. And so I'm a champion of that. I think, look, if you don't have a lot of money and you're maybe struggling to raise capital. So I like your ideas where you talked about the things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money or barely any money that you can get going out of the gate, like the PTO. Another thing, I think one of the biggest complaints that I hear from employees, and maybe you hear this too, is that their thanks from employers, they really just get, let's just get them some pizza and that's it. And that's all they see once a year. Their biggest complaint is like, pizza's nice, but can we get something different?
Right.
Can we get something different? And when I was running dispensaries, I would always go to the owner and say, I want to incentivize the employees. Let's measure what everyone's doing and they're accomplishing. Let's give everyone goals to work towards. And then we're giving out $100 gift cards. And I would take $500 and have a caterer bring in food once a month for the staff and stuff like that. And I made sure I went to Costco or whatever, and I had coffee and hot cocoa and drinks and candy and all that stuff in the break room. There's some places I've talked to, they don't even have a break room. There was a dispensary that I worked in my first day. I walked in and the employees were standing up eating. And I said, is there a table? And they said, no. and I sent someone to Costco to buy a 6-foot table so the employees could sit down. I know that situation exists all across the country. I know there's employees that still don't have a place to sit down. They don't have a break room. And I think these are really tiny, small fixes, right? You're not spending $8,000 a year on this.
No, I think those are all real challenges that you bring up that owners have. Sometimes, hey, you have certain constraints physically that you're not going to have a 500 square foot room with the leather couch and TVs and all that.
Yeah, they could have a small space. What if their facility is only 800 square feet? Where do you put the staff?
So I think there's some things that we've heard from businesses that they're like, how do we solve for this, right? And again, I don't think there's one exact thing or the other. But one thing that sometimes I am suggesting, or I've heard other companies do, is it's kind of like, why reinvent the wheel, right? If there's a particular business that is super successful in your state, you're a business owner, so are they. Why don't you reach out to them and just say, hey, you know what? Love to pick your brain. Just say, Jenny, you've been super successful in Denver. You've been crushing it. You guys are doing awesome. We're a new business. I'd welcome your insight just to kind of hear something. What are some of the things that you're doing? Would you be open to a conversation? And my guess would be if you frame it in that right way, most business owners, people love to get their opinion, right? Who doesn't like to talk about how successful they are? Oh, yeah, of course. I'd love to tell you about it. But also, they're going to give you probably some great free information. This is not going to ChatGPT. This is getting from a successful business owner in your market, right? Whatever state that is. Do you want to become vertically integrated and be successful with employees? Talk to someone who's done that before. Talk to multiple people. I would think that is a way to get it exactly from the key people who are doing it. The other thing that I would suggest, if a business owner, this can be kind of done two ways. If you're a business owner who's been in existence, who wants to get better at what they're doing, go to Glassdoor and Indeed, read what your employees are saying about your business.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's a gold mine.
It's brutal. It is a gold mine. It's a nugget.
Not for the faint-hearted, right?
Yeah. Be prepared to go in and be crushed a little bit. But it's full of truth bombs. Let's just say that.
Yes. So I think if a business owner is willing to say, okay, I'm going to put in my armor a little bit if we're having challenges, let's see what people are saying. Because obviously what's said from the employees who left, and they'll not hold back. You've seen this, right? What they're going to post is what you will not hear in an exit interview.
Yeah, it's true.
Right? So you're going to see that on Glassdoor. You're going to see that on Indeed, right? And again, the same type of thing is like maybe you want to see if there are companies, so it can be used, I think, as too, and not just from a negative, but from a positive. Google what the top 20 best run companies are doing, right? Find out which companies those are, and then go to their reviews and then to see they have 9.1 and 8.6. Great. You just have a playbook now of what to do and what not to do at your own business.
Great.
Free. It doesn't cost you any money. You don't have to spend some thousands of dollars on an employee consultant. You're going to hear it from the employees themselves.
That's awesome. Really good stuff. And wrapping up, I wanted to ask, do you think rescheduling will enable companies to provide more benefits, or do you think that's not going to really matter at all?
I guess my first response is I hope so.
Of course, I hope so too.
Not for my benefit, because I'm in business. Certainly, I'm hopeful that it will, that employees deserve it, right? These employees work really hard. And they're, like I said, they're the lifeblood of the business. They deserve to have solid health care and ways to take care of themselves and their family. They deserve to have their financial pictures in mind. They deserve to be able to have their mental health taken care of. So yes, I am hopeful. In actual practice, it's more TBD, right? It will see.
It is. I think it is no one has to be determined.
I think no one has that answer. Obviously, the big question is going to happen for the rescheduling on the recreational, not just the medical side for 280E. So obviously, we'll see where that goes. But I do think, as just in general, as cannabis continues to mature as an industry, I think the businesses are going to have to be able to provide if they want to be competitive and if they want to be you hear that buzzword, they want to be the employer of choice, but if they want to take care of their people and they want their people to stay and grow with them, then hopefully the financials will be there to allow them to invest in their staff.
I think it's true, and I'm rooting. I want the best for employees too.
Who doesn't? You want to see taken care of.
I will tell everybody: without employees, there is no cannabis industry. There's no cannabis industry. They are the gears that move the industry forward. I don't care how much money you infiltrate into the cannabis industry, without the employees and without patients and consumers, they're the reason that we're all here. If we didn't have those things, we wouldn't have an industry at all.
100%. So again, we'll all cross our fingers that the rescheduling will do some things, obviously, around baking, around benefit access, around just infrastructure, compliance, all these types of things, that if it opens up that the markets to invest more in their businesses and just be like regular businesses, how could that not be just helpful to people who work in the industry every day? So that's what we're crossing our fingers for, but obviously we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the rescheduling crystal ball is not very crystal yet.
No,
not
well,
crystal
if you
clear.
figure that one out, let me know, because I got Powerballs coming up and it's looking pretty big these days, and we can split it.
I will say, so many people are talking about rescheduling, and it's hard for me to believe anybody right now because it's just all opinion until the government comes out and says, here's what's exactly happening. It's a lot of hearsay. But at the end of the day, everyone should still be prepared to adapt with whatever is thrown our way. That is the cannabis industry. Lots of adapting.
We are Adaptive HR there.
I was going to say Adaptive HR.
That softball, so I don't know.
It wasn't planned. It wasn't planned. Oh, gosh. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It's been great having you on as a guest. I will have Scott's information in the description box. Scott's great. You should reach out to him. He'll prepare a little deck for you. That's what I love about Scott. He does such a great job. He'll put together a nice little outline for you if you're looking for a benefit package or anything like that. And for those who stream the podcast, it is available on Spotify or Apple, and also wherever else you like to listen to podcasts. And then you can check out the YouTube channel, which is at Under the Microscope with Jenny. And please go on there and subscribe and check out some of the videos. I appreciate you being here, Scott.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in every week from wherever you are, if that's in the U.S. market or if you're in the international market. I really appreciate all of our listeners. So I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and I'll see you on the next episode.